They say a wedding is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. For me, it was the day the ground cracked open beneath my feet. My name is Claire. I'm 27 years old, and what I'm about to tell you is not the story of a fairy tale wedding. It's the story of how I stood in a white dress and watched the future I thought I had go up in flames. It began like any other morning. Sunlight streamed through the curtains of my childhood bedroom, the same room where I once taped posters on the wall and dreamed of adulthood. Only this time I wasn't a girl dreaming anymore, I was a bride. My fiancé Nathan was waiting across town, or so I believed. He was the man I had built my life around for the past 5 years. Everyone in my hometown said we were the perfect match, him with his strong jaw and confident stride, me with the ring he had saved 8 months to buy glittering on my hand. We were the golden couple. People whispered it with admiration, with envy. I believed them. For weeks the energy had been electric. My mom cried every time she saw my dress hanging in the closet. My dad practiced his father of the bride speech in secret, though I caught him in the mirror once mouthing words with tears in his eyes. Even my younger brother Evan, who never took anything seriously, was buzzing with excitement. He teased me constantly, "Claire, don't trip on the aisle. It'll go viral for all the wrong reasons." We laughed and I brushed off the nerves. I thought I had nothing to fear. Beside me through every moment was my maid of honor, Elise. She wasn't just a bridesmaid, she was my best friend since I was 7. We'd grown up side by side through sleepovers, heartbreaks, and college rejections. Elise was the kind of friend you swore you'd keep for life. The one who sat with you in hospital waiting rooms, the one who wrote your college essays because you were too exhausted from double shifts. I trusted her as much as I trusted Nathan, maybe more. When Nathan proposed, Elise screamed louder than I did. She threw herself into planning my wedding with a passion that left me speechless. Every flower, every invitation, every lace sample, she had a hand in it. Looking back, I wonder if she enjoyed the planning too much. But that's the cruel gift of hindsight clarity that arrives when it's far too late to change anything. That morning, though, there were no shadows. I was radiant in my gown, delicate lace sleeves trailing at my wrists, a skirt that floated when I walked. My mother whispered, "You look like a dream." Elise squeezed my hand and whispered, "Nathan is going to lose his mind when he sees you." I believed her. I believed them both. I remember pausing in front of the mirror, staring at myself, at the hopeful woman staring back. She was ready to walk into forever, ready to believe that love conquers all. She had no idea that within hours the word forever would taste like ashes in her mouth. Because that's the thing about betrayal, it never knocks politely. It doesn't send warnings. It crashes through your life like a storm you didn't see on the radar. And when it hits, it doesn't just break your heart. It rewrites your entire story. I'm telling you this now because I want you to know how it feels to stand in a wedding dress veil pinned in place and realize that the two people you trusted most, your partner and your best friend, are not who you thought they were. But more than that, I want you to know what I did about it. Because some call it revenge. I call it reclaiming my life. And if you've ever been betrayed, abandoned, or made to feel like you were not enough, I promise this story isn't just mine. It's for you too. Stay with me because what happened next will shock you. I used to think stability was something you earned after years of trying, like a reward for patience. With Nathan, it felt like I had finally reached that safe harbor. I worked as a first-grade teacher in our small town of Rockford, Illinois. Every morning I'd step into my classroom filled with sticky-fingered kids who thought glitter was currency and hugs solved everything. And each evening I returned to the apartment Nathan and I shared above a bakery downtown. It smelled like sugar and cinnamon year-round, and I loved it. Nathan worked for his father's construction company. He wasn't flashy, but he carried himself with the kind of confidence people admired. Strong shoulders, sandy hair, and green eyes that crinkled when he laughed. Parents at school pickup would often tell me, "You're so lucky, Claire. He's such a catch." And I agreed. I thought I had won the lottery of love. Elise, my maid of honor, was the other cornerstone of my world. Long black hair, effortless charm, the kind of beauty that turned heads when she walked into a room. But to me, she wasn't competition. She was family. She was the one who held my hair back when I was sick, who stayed up all night, helping me finish my teaching credentials. When my grandmother passed away 2 years ago, Elise cried harder than I did. She was my person. When Nathan proposed last summer, Elise was the first call I made. I can still hear her shriek of excitement through the phone. "Oh my God, Claire, this is going to be the most beautiful wedding ever." She dove into the planning like it was her mission in life. Venue scouting, cake, tastings, flower arrangements. Elise was there, eyes shining as if she were the bride herself. At the time, I thought it was love for me. Now I wonder if it was something else. But in those weeks leading up to the wedding, everything seemed perfect. My mom was a ball of happy tears. Dad was secretly writing his speech. Even Great-Aunt Margaret flew in from Florida, sharp-eyed and witty, at 82 years old, married for 60 years before my uncle passed. The night before the wedding, she squeezed my hands and whispered, "Marriage isn't about the dress, sweetheart. It's about every morning after when life is hard and you choose each other anyway. Make sure he'll choose you back." I nodded, certain Nathan would. I remember going to bed that night, smiling, dreaming of walking down the aisle. I thought the story was already written, a white dress vows, exchanged a life together. What I didn't know was that Elise and Nathan had already begun scribbling in the margins, changing the ending behind my back. And before I take you deeper into what happened, let me pause to ask you something. Because this channel is built on stories we share together. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I love seeing where our global family is tuning in. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this journey. Trust me, you'll want to stay for the ending. That morning, June 15th, dawned clear and bright sunlight pouring into the house where I stayed the night before according to tradition. The air buzzed with excitement. My brother Evan sang off-key in the shower. My dad was on the phone. My mom was stress cooking enough breakfast to feed an army. My phone buzzed with 2 messages, one from Nathan, "Good morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you at the altar," and one from Elise. So excited. This is going to be perfect. It should have been perfect. Every detail was in place, the Riverside Manor venue with its sprawling gardens, the white roses Elise and I had arranged, the crisp linens and polished silverware waiting for the guests. The photographer snapped candid shots of us getting ready, capturing my transformation into a bride. I stood in front of the mirror, veil cascading down my shoulders, and for a brief second I let myself believe the fairy tale. I thought, this is it. Everything has led me here. If only I had known what was waiting just a few hours ahead. Friendship isn't just built in the good times, it's welded together in the late-night calls, the whispered secrets, and the broken hearts patched back together. That's what Elise had always been for me. She wasn't just a friend. She was the sister I didn't have. We met when we were 7, sitting cross-legged on the schoolyard asphalt, trading peanut butter sandwiches and secrets. Over the years, our lives twisted around each other, like vines climbing the same trellis. When my high school boyfriend dumped me before prom, Elise showed up in a thrifted gown and a tiara, blasting music in my driveway, until I laughed so hard I couldn't cry anymore. When her parents divorced, she crashed on my couch for 2 weeks straight, curled in a blanket, while I made her boxed mac and cheese. She was the one I called when I got my first teaching job. She was the one who helped me study until dawn for my credentialing exams. Elise knew everything about me, my fears, my quirks, even the way I liked my coffee, 2 sugars, splash of cream. And Nathan knew that. He used to joke that marrying me meant marrying Elise too because she was always there. And I laughed because why wouldn't I? She was my person. So when Nathan proposed last year under the oak tree in the park, where we had our first date, Elise was the first phone call I made. I can still hear her squealing through the receiver. "Claire, I'm so happy for you. This is going to be the most beautiful wedding ever." Her excitement was infectious. She grabbed her planner and threw herself into every detail. Looking back, the irony is almost unbearable. She helped me choose the lace on my gown, sat beside me tasting cakes, even addressed invitations in her looping, perfect handwriting, because mine looked like chicken scratch. She stayed up with me folding napkins into little triangles when I was too tired to think straight. She even squeezed my hand once, looked into my eyes, and said, "You deserve this happiness, Claire. Nathan is so lucky to have you." And I believed her. I believed every word. The morning of the wedding, Elise was radiant in her lavender bridesmaid dress. Her long hair tumbled over her shoulders in waves, and her laugh echoed through the bridal suite as she teased me about not crying and ruining my makeup. She darted around the room, making sure every detail was perfect. Adjusting centerpieces, checking on the flowers, coordinating with the musicians. I remember thinking, God, how lucky am I to have both of them. A man who loved me enough to save for 8 months to buy me a ring, and a friend who loved me enough to give every ounce of herself to make my wedding flawless. It felt like a dream team. But Aunt Margaret's words from the night before kept circling in my head. Make sure he'll choose you back. At the time, I brushed them off, thinking she was just being wise in that cryptic elder way. Now I know she saw something I didn't. Her sharp eyes caught undercurrents I ignored. As I sat there, veil pinned in place, Elise leaned down and whispered, "Nathan is going to lose his mind when he sees you. This day will be unforgettable." She was right, but not in the way she meant. I tell you this not to drag out the pain, but because it's important you understand why it cut so deep. Betrayal doesn't sting as much from strangers. It destroys you when it comes from the ones you would have bled for. And Elise. She wasn't just my bridesmaid, she was the one I trusted, with every piece of myself. So when the truth revealed itself later, it didn't just feel like Nathan broke my heart. It felt like Elise stabbed me in the back and smiled while doing it. At that point, though, I was blind, wrapped in lace, and hope I thought I had it all. And that's exactly when the universe decided to show me just how wrong I was. The morning of June 15th felt like something out of a movie. Sunlight spilled through the curtains, warming the bridal suite, as laughter bubbled up from every corner. My mom flitted around in her pale blue dress tissues already in hand, while my dad paced the hallway, rehearsing his speech under his breath. My younger brother Evan, who had been assigned the role of ring security, strutted around like a secret agent, sunglasses and all. There was joy in every sound, the clink of champagne flutes, the rustle of silk dresses, the high notes of the string quartet tuning up outside. Even the air seemed to hum with anticipation. I thought, this is it. This is the day I've waited for all my life. Elise was everywhere, making herself indispensable. She tied the flower girl's sash into a perfect bow, directed the photographer to get the good angles, and slipped into the kitchen to double-check that the caterers hadn't forgotten the vegan options. Every time she passed by me, she squeezed my hand or blew me a kiss like a good luck charm. To everyone else, she looked like the perfect best friend. To me, she was exactly that. Meanwhile, Nathan was across the property with his groomsmen at the Riverside Manors carriage house. My phone buzzed with one last text from him before the ceremony. "See you at the altar, beautiful. Forever starts today." My heart melted reading those words. I clutched the phone to my chest, convinced that this was the man who would choose me every single day for the rest of my life. As the hour drew near, guests began arriving in their Sunday best. My mother peeked out the window, narrating like a sportscaster. "The Johnsons are here. Oh, and the Petersons brought their daughter. She looks lovely. Oh, look, Aunt Margaret is waving at the ushers." Ah, Aunt Margaret, 82 years old and sharp as a knife. She wore a lilac dress and her late husband's gold watch, and she moved with the kind of grace that came from living a life full of choices and consequences. The night before, she had taken me aside, eyes narrowing with that uncanny instinct of hers, and whispered, "Don't get lost in the fairy tale, Claire. Make sure he'll stand by you when the magic fades." At the time, I thought it was just generational wisdom, the kind of thing people say before weddings. But now her words echo like a prophecy. Still that morning, I ignored the warning signs. Elise's laughter, Nathan's text, my family's joy, they drowned out every shred of doubt. I let myself believe in the fairy tale. The bridal suite was a whirlwind, lipstick applied, curls pinned, dress zipped. When I finally stepped into my gown, silence fell. My mom burst into tears. Evan let out a whistle, and even Aunt Margaret's eyes softened. Elise adjusted my veil and whispered, "Nathan's going to lose his mind when he sees you." I felt like a princess, radiant in lace and satin, and the weight of the moment pressed down on me. The photographer captured it all, the trembling hands, the watery smiles, the laughter that covered nerves. As we lined up for the processional, my father slipped his arm through mine. He looked at me with a mix of pride and sorrow, as if he were walking me across a bridge he could never cross again. "You look just like your mother did on our wedding day," he said softly. My throat tightened, and for a second I thought I might cry off all my makeup. The music began low and steady, swelling with each step down the aisle. Guests turned faces, glowing phones snapping. Nathan stood at the altar, tall and confident, in his tuxedo eyes locked on mine. For a moment, time froze. My heart raced as if I were running, but all I was doing was walking toward him, toward forever. The ceremony was a blur of vows and rings of whispered promises and shaky voices. When Nathan said "I do," my chest nearly burst with joy. Elise stood behind me, bouquet in hand, smiling so wide it almost looked like pride. And as the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, I thought the story had ended in happily ever after. But in truth, the story was only beginning, and the cracks invisible to me then were already spreading beneath the surface. The reception was alive with color, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. String lights draped across the ballroom like stars caught in a net, while the band tuned up for the first dance. Guests swirled in conversation plates of hors d'oeuvres in their hands, while my father gave a toast that left everyone both laughing and teary-eyed. It was exactly what I had envisioned almost. Almost because even in the midst of celebration, little things began to unravel. At first I brushed them aside. A missing centerpiece here, a waiter carrying the wrong wine there. But then midway through dinner, a small but startling moment happened that I can't erase from memory. I had just taken a bite of the rosemary chicken when Aunt Margaret leaned across the table, her sharp eyes flicking toward the head table. "Claire," she murmured in that low-cutting tone of hers, "watch closely." I followed her gaze. Elise was standing by Nathan, whispering something in his ear. Whatever she said made him laugh, not the polite laugh he gave everyone else that day, but the deep, easy laugh I'd once thought belonged only to me. Elise reached out, resting her hand on his arm, lingering just a beat too long. My stomach twisted, but I forced a smile. It was my wedding day. Surely I was overthinking. I tried to dismiss it, but once you notice a crack, it's hard not to see the fault lines. Elise seemed to orbit Nathan throughout the evening, adjusting his boutonniere, slipping him a glass of champagne, brushing lint off his jacket. Each time I told myself, she's my best friend. She's just helping. But Aunt Margaret's words echoed in my head louder with each laugh they shared. Make sure he'll stand by you. The first dance began, pulling me back to the dream. Nathan held me close, swaying to the music. For those few minutes, it was just us, our eyes locked, our vows still warm on our lips. Guests cheered, glasses clinked, and I let myself believe again. Maybe I had imagined everything. Maybe love really was as simple as choosing to trust. But later, when the bouquet toss came, Elise caught it. Of course she did. She jumped higher than anyone else, clutching the flowers like a prize, her smile blinding. The room erupted in laughter, but as I looked at Nathan, I could have sworn I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Surprise, guilt, desire. I couldn't place it, but it chilled me in a way I didn't dare admit. That night when Nathan and I finally slipped away, I tried to silence the unease. I told myself it was nerves, exhaustion, or maybe just the surreal weight of the day. But deep inside, a seed of doubt had been planted, and once planted, doubt has a way of growing quietly, invisibly, until it breaks the surface. Looking back, I wonder if I had confronted it right then, would anything have been different? Would I have stopped the storm before it began? Or was I destined to walk straight into betrayal with my eyes wide shut? And now let me ask you something, because maybe you've been there too. Have you ever ignored a gut feeling because the truth felt too heavy to carry? Have you ever told yourself a lie just to preserve the happiness you thought you deserved? Tell me in the comments, I want to know if I was alone in this. And while you're here, don't forget to hit subscribe. This isn't just my story, it's a place where we share, connect, and heal together. The reception ended with cheers, sparklers, and promises of forever. But as the last ember died out in the night sky, I had no idea that the fire burning closest to me was already out of control. Our honeymoon was supposed to be the start of everything beautiful. Nathan had booked a week at a coastal resort in California, waves crashing against jagged cliffs, sunsets, melting into the ocean champagne on the balcony. It was picture perfect, the kind of place people post on Instagram with hashtags like blessed and forever. At first I let myself sink into it. We lounged by the pool, hiked scenic trails, and spent lazy mornings tangled in white hotel sheets. There were moments where I thought, yes, this is what love is meant to feel like. But between the laughter and the kisses, little shadows crept in. I noticed things I couldn't quite ignore. The first sign came when Nathan left his phone on the nightstand while he showered. The screen lit up with a message from Elise Hope. "The honeymoon is everything you dreamed of. Miss you already. Miss you already." The words stabbed deeper than I expected. Why was my best friend texting my brand new husband like that? I told myself they'd been friends too, that it was harmless. But still, the unease curled inside me like smoke I couldn't clear. Later that night, while we sat at a candlelit table overlooking the ocean, Nathan seemed distracted. His phone buzzed again, another message, another quick glance, another half smile he didn't share with me. When I asked what it was, he brushed it off. Just work stuff, don't worry. But his eyes told another story. I wanted to confront him, but how could I? We had just promised forever. Who starts forever with suspicion? So I swallowed it, smiled, and lifted my glass when he toasted to new beginnings. The champagne fizzed on my tongue, but the sweetness was already turning bitter. On our third day, I caught him on the balcony phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, urgent. When I asked who he'd been talking to, he shrugged Evan about the apartment lease. But Evan texted me later, confused, "Nope, haven't heard from Nathan in days." That was the moment I felt the ground tilt under me. And here's the thing, betrayal doesn't usually arrive with fireworks. It seeps in slowly, a drip at a time, until suddenly you're drowning. One text, one laugh, one lie. That's how it starts. The honeymoon ended, but the cracks didn't. On the plane ride home, Nathan fell asleep with his head against the window, while I sat awake the entire flight replaying every detail: Elise's hand on his arm at the wedding, her texts, his lies. The puzzle pieces didn't fit, and yet they formed a picture I didn't want to see. I remember staring out the airplane window, clouds floating like ghosts below, thinking, am I crazy? Am I inventing this? Or am I already losing him to her? Sometimes I wonder if I should have trusted my instincts right then. Because if there's one lesson I've learned, it's that our gut rarely lies. And I want to pause here to ask, have you ever seen the signs but told yourself they didn't matter? Have you ever felt the truth clawing at your chest, but silenced it because you were afraid of what it meant? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. These stories aren't just mine. They're reminders that none of us are alone when facing the unthinkable. When the plane touched down and we walked back into our apartment, I thought life would settle into normal married bliss. But the honeymoon was only the calm before the storm, and soon the storm would break in ways I could never have imagined. Coming home from the honeymoon, I thought the uneasy feelings would fade. Back in our own apartment, surrounded by our things, the books I loved stacked on shelves, the scent of my lavender candles, the photo frames with our smiles frozen in happier days, I thought stability would ground me. But instead, reality sharpened everything I had been trying to blur. At first it was the silences. Nathan had always been chatty, telling me about his workday, the quirky coworkers, even the mundane details like which sandwich he grabbed for lunch. But now he was quieter, more guarded. I'd ask how was work, and he'd shrug, muttering busy. Conversations ended before they began. Then came the nights. He started working late, or so he said. Sometimes he wouldn't come home until after midnight. I'd wait at the table with reheated pasta, the candles burned down my chest tight with worry. He'd walk in smelling faintly of perfume I didn't own. His tie loosened, his smile, weary but distant. Sorry, long meeting, he'd say. But when I asked what the meeting was about, he never had an answer. It was Elise who turned the knife without even knowing it, or maybe she did. A week after we got back, she showed up at our apartment to drop off a gift. She swept in like she owned the place, carrying a bottle of wine and hugging Nathan just a beat too long. When I asked how she'd been, she smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, Nathan and I have been catching up, didn't he tell you?" No, he hadn't. That night after she left, I confronted him. "Why didn't you tell me you'd been seeing Elise?" He laughed it off, calling me paranoid. "She's your best friend, Claire. Wouldn't it be weird if I avoided her now that we're married?" But I couldn't shake the image of them together, the way her eyes lingered on him, the ease between them. It was a familiarity I thought belonged only to me. One evening, as I folded laundry, Nathan's phone buzzed on the counter. Another message from Elise last night was amazing. Can't wait for the next one. My hands trembled so badly I dropped his shirt. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth. But instead, I tucked the phone back where I found it, waiting for him to confess. He didn't. Every day became a battle with myself. Was I crazy, overreacting? Or was I watching my marriage dissolve one secret at a time? I started replaying our vows in my head, the words about honesty and faithfulness, wondering if they had meant the same thing to him as they did to me. The hardest part was the isolation. Who could I tell my parents had adored Nathan? My friends all envied our perfect love story. And Elise, my supposed best friend, was the very person betraying me. I carried the weight alone, smiling in public, breaking in private. But here's the truth I didn't understand. Then silence doesn't save you. Silence is what betrays you most. I know many of you listening right now have probably been in my shoes, suspecting, doubting, but staying quiet because the truth feels too heavy. So tell me, what would you have done in my place? Speak your mind in the comments. And if you're finding pieces of yourself in this story, make sure you subscribe. These conversations matter, and your voice matters too. The night I found Elise's text was the night I knew my life was about to change. I just didn't know how much. What started as a whisper of doubt was becoming a roar I couldn't silence. And soon, I would face the kind of truth that leaves scars. The night after finding Elise's text, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my chest heavy with questions I wasn't ready to ask. By morning, the silence in our apartment was louder than any words. Nathan moved around like nothing was wrong, pouring coffee, adjusting his tie, kissing me lightly on the cheek before leaving for another long meeting. I knew I couldn't carry it anymore. If he wouldn't give me answers, Elise would. That afternoon I called her. My voice was calm, too calm. "Hey, wanna grab lunch?" It's been a while. She sounded surprised, maybe even hesitant, but agreed. We met at a cafe downtown, the kind of place we used to haunt during college when secrets didn't exist between us. Elise walked in looking flawless hair, perfectly curled smile, bright like nothing was out of place. She hugged me, but I felt nothing. It was like hugging a stranger. Over salads and iced tea, I tried to ease into it. We chatted about work, old memories, meaningless things. But my stomach churned with every passing second. Finally, I leaned in and said softly, "Elise, I know about you and Nathan." Her fork froze midair. For a moment, her mask slipped. Then she laughed too loud, too forced. "Claire, what are you talking about? Nathan's your husband. He loves you." But her eyes betrayed her. They flickered nervous, as if she knew the lie was already unraveling. I pressed on. I saw the texts. "Last night was amazing. Don't lie to me." Her smile faltered completely. She set her fork down, fingers trembling just slightly. "Claire, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I snapped, my voice shaking. "You were supposed to be my best friend. How long has this been going on?" She didn't answer right away. She just looked down, guilt painting her face. Finally, she whispered, "Since before the wedding." The words hit me like a punch. My breath caught and the room seemed to tilt. Before the wedding. My mind reeled, flashing back to the rehearsal dinner, to Elise standing by my side, smiling, raising a glass to toast us. All the while, she had been betraying me. I wanted to scream, to throw my glass across the room, but instead, I sat frozen numb. Elise reached out a hand across the table. "Claire, it wasn't supposed to happen. We didn't mean—" I jerked back. "Don't touch me." The cafe noise faded into a dull roar around us, but in that moment, it felt like only the two of us existed. Me drowning in betrayal, and her caught in the act. I left without finishing my meal, without giving her the chance to explain further. As I stepped outside, the sun felt too bright, too cruel, as if mocking me for believing in fairy tales. Walking home, I felt the weight of a decision pressing against me. I could stay silent, pretend I didn't know, let the lies consume me, or I could face Nathan with the truth Elise had just confirmed. And here's where I want to pause, because betrayal doesn't just shatter trust. It forces you to choose: fight for the illusion, or burn it all down. If you've ever been in that crossroads, tell me, what did you choose? Comment your story below. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, so you don't miss the rest of mine. That night, I sat in the dark of our apartment, waiting for Nathan to come home. My heart pounded as I imagined his face when I told him what Elise had admitted. I thought confronting him would bring relief, but deep down, I knew it would only ignite the storm I had been avoiding. And the storm was coming. I sat in the dark, the only light coming from the street lamp bleeding through the blinds. My hands were clenched so tight in my lap that my nails dug into my skin, but I didn't feel it. All I felt was the pounding of my heart and the roaring in my ears. Elise's confession kept replaying like a broken record since before the wedding. The key turned in the lock. Nathan stepped inside, looking surprised to see me awake. "Claire. Why are you sitting here in the dark?" he asked, his voice casual, as if he hadn't just torn my world apart. I stood, forcing my voice to stay steady. "We need to talk." He froze. Maybe it was the way I said it. Maybe it was the tension crackling in the air. He set down his briefcase slowly. Okay, what's going on? I didn't waste time. I had lunch with Elise today. Something flickered across his face so fast most people would have missed it. But I saw. A flash of guilt, then a mask sliding into place. That's nice, he said carefully. How is she? My voice rose. Don't play games with me, Nathan. She told me everything. The color drained from his face. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he laughed a short, hollow sound. Claire, you're letting her get in your head. You know Elise, she's dramatic, she twists things. She's jealous of what we have. I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. She didn't have to twist anything. I saw the texts. Last night was amazing. Do you want to deny that? The silence that followed was heavier than any words. He looked away, his jaw tight, his hands curling into fists at his sides. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. The man I thought I knew, the one who had vowed to cherish me, to protect me, was standing in front of me, and he couldn't even say the words to defend his innocence, because there was none. Finally, he muttered, "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Those words shattered me more than a denial would have. He wasn't saying it didn't happen. He was admitting it had, and worse, that it had a rhythm, a plan, a betrayal carefully hidden beneath the surface of my wedding vows. I sank onto the couch, my body trembling. Why Nathan? Why her? Why anyone? He sat across from me, his face hardening. Claire, you don't understand. Elise and I, there's history there. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but... He trailed off, unable to meet my eyes. Every word cut deeper. The man who once held my hand like I was his whole world was now confessing that I had been sharing him all along. In that moment, I realized something: betrayal doesn't just come from strangers. It comes from the people who know exactly where to stab you. I whispered, "You ruined us, both of you." He leaned forward, desperation flickering. "It doesn't have to end this way. We can move past this. Don't throw everything away because of one mistake." One mistake, the phrase echoed in my head. But this wasn't one mistake, it was a string of choices, deliberate lies, stolen nights, broken promises. I stood again, my voice stronger this time. It ended the moment you let her touch you. Don't blame me for walking away from ashes you created. Nathan's face twisted, anger replacing guilt. If you walk out that door, Claire, don't expect to come back. For the first time, I felt clarity. His threat didn't scare me, it freed me. And yet I didn't move. Not that night. Because leaving isn't just about walking out. It's about deciding when and how and with what strength you'll never look back. That night I chose silence, not because I was weak, but because I was waiting. Waiting for the right moment to strike back, to reclaim myself. And here's where I'll leave you for now, because sometimes the most dangerous part of betrayal isn't the blow itself, but the pause before you decide how to respond. What would you have done in my place? Drop your thoughts below, and if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, because the storm you think you've seen, it's only just beginning. The days that followed were some of the longest of my life. Every second inside that apartment felt suffocating, as if the walls themselves were whispering the lies Nathan and Elise had spun behind my back. But I didn't confront him again, not yet. Instead, I started to plan. It's strange when your heart shatters, there's a moment where pain turns into something sharper. Not just survival, but strategy. I wasn't going to let Nathan control the narrative, make me the desperate wife begging for scraps of love. No, if he had played me for a fool, then I would make sure the end of this story was mine to write. At first, I kept my routine as if nothing had changed. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner. I smiled when he walked through the door, listened when he talked about his day. To anyone watching, we were still the perfect couple. But underneath that mask, I was quietly gathering strength. I began to watch him more closely. The way he checked his phone at dinner, angling the screen away from me. The late nights at the office that didn't line up with his calendar. The sudden need to work weekends. I wasn't imagining things anymore. I was collecting evidence. Every time I caught those little cracks in his lies, I wrote them down in a notebook I kept hidden in my dresser drawer. Dates, times, excuses. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was an investigator building a case against the man who had vowed to love me. And in those moments alone, I asked myself hard questions. What do I really want? Do I want revenge or freedom? The answer came slowly, but it was clear I wanted both. One evening when Nathan claimed he had a late meeting, I followed him. My heart pounded as I tailed his car through the city, careful to keep distance. He pulled into a hotel parking lot, one far too fancy for business. I waited in the shadows watching as Elise stepped out of a cab, and walked straight into his arms. That image seared into me like fire. They didn't even try to hide it. Seeing them together so casual in their betrayal made me realize something crucial. They weren't just careless. They were convinced I would never fight back. But they were wrong. I didn't storm inside. I didn't scream. I drove home, sat in the dark, and let the rage settle into something colder. Revenge isn't about anger, it's about patience. Over the next weeks, I began to separate my finances, moving money into an account Nathan didn't know about. I quietly copied important documents, our mortgage insurance, his tax returns. Every small step was a stitch in the safety net I was weaving for myself. And yet in public, I still played the part, smiling at dinner parties, posting happy photos, laughing at his jokes. I wasn't doing it for him, I was doing it to buy time to make sure when the truth came crashing down, it would hit harder than he ever imagined. But here's the thing, no one tells you carrying a secret plan is both empowering and exhausting. I would lie awake at night listening to his steady breathing beside me, wondering how long I could keep up the charade before my anger exploded. And that's where I want to pull you into this story. Have you ever had to hold your tongue waiting for the right moment to speak your truth? Tell me in the comments. I promise your words might help someone else who's been where you are. And if you're still with me, don't forget to subscribe, because the next part of this story is where the mask finally starts to crack. As the weeks stretched on, I became sharper, calmer, almost unrecognizable to myself. The broken, betrayed woman was fading. In her place stood someone else, someone who wasn't afraid anymore. Someone who was ready to play the game better than they ever had. And when the game finally broke wide open, it wouldn't just be Nathan and Elise facing the fallout. It would be everyone who had ever underestimated me. The storm was no longer coming. I was the storm. The facade couldn't last forever. Pretending we were the perfect couple while I carried the weight of betrayal inside me was like trying to hold back a tidal wave with bare hands. And soon the cracks began to show. It started small. Nathan came home one evening with his tie loose and his cologne overwhelming, as if he had drowned himself in it to mask something else. He tried to kiss me on the cheek, but I turned my head just slightly. Subtle, but enough for him to notice. His eyes narrowed. "What's wrong with you lately?" he asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. I forced a smile. Nothing at all, just tired. But that was a lie, and he knew it. The tension between us became impossible to ignore. Our conversations grew shorter, clipped. At dinners with friends, my laughter came seconds too late. And Nathan, he grew restless, jumpy. He started double-checking his phone, leaving it face down on the table, as though hiding the evidence of his late-night texts. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. He slipped up. One Saturday morning while he was showering, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally I wouldn't have touched it, but this time the preview lit up the screen. "Last night was perfect. Can't wait until next time. Elise." I didn't open the message. I didn't need to. My hands trembled as I set the phone back down, but my mind was clear. He wasn't even careful anymore. He thought I was blind, too broken to see what was right in front of me. And that was when I decided the game was almost over. I began to pull away just slightly at first. I stopped asking about his day. I stopped leaving little notes in his briefcase the way I used to. I no longer pretended to be the doting wife. And he noticed. One night he cornered me in the kitchen. "Claire," he said, his voice tight, "you've changed. You're distant. Are you seeing someone?" The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. Me seeing someone? I looked him straight in the eye and said softly, "Why would you think that?" He shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. It's just, you're not the same anymore." No, I wasn't. I was stronger, colder, smarter. But Elise wasn't as careful either. She called the house one evening when she thought Nathan would answer. When I picked up instead, there was a sharp inhale on the other end, followed by silence. I didn't say a word. I simply listened to the sound of her breath before she hung up. That call was proof enough. The cracks weren't just in my marriage, they were in their little fantasy too. She was nervous. Maybe she wondered if Nathan had lied to her as easily as he lied to me. Maybe she realized that when you build something on betrayal, it can't stand forever. Still, I didn't confront either of them. Not yet. Because confrontation would have given them power. I wanted control. And the opportunity came faster than I expected. At a dinner party hosted by Nathan's boss, I watched him try to charm the room, playing the role of devoted husband, with his arm casually resting on my chair. But when Elise walked in, invited by another colleague, his hand twitched. His smile faltered. Our eyes met across the table, hers wide with panic, mine calm and steady. She knew I knew. I sipped my wine and said nothing. That silence was louder than any accusation. And here's where I want to pause and draw you in. Have you ever had a moment where you held the upper hand, but chose silence instead of words? What did it feel like to hold power in your restraint? Share it below, because your story matters too. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because the next turn in this tale is where silence becomes action and secrets start burning in the open. That night, Nathan tried to act as if nothing had happened, but the way Elise avoided his gaze told me everything. Their secret wasn't just ours anymore. Other people could see it too. And once that happens, a secret is no longer safe. It's a weapon waiting to be used. The cracks weren't cracks anymore. They were fractures running deep through every lie they had built. And I was ready to be the one who finally made it all collapse. I knew the dinner party had changed everything. Elise's face, pale under the glow of crystal chandeliers, had betrayed her panic. Nathan's stiff posture told me he was crumbling inside. And me, I left that night knowing the game was finally shifting into my hands. When betrayal festers, it either consumes you or fuels you. I had let it fuel me, and now I was ready to act. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. Nathan was still asleep, snoring softly beside me, unaware that his world was about to tilt. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my notebook, the one where I had been logging every lie, every suspicious late night, every inconsistency. It had grown thick with details, a record of deceit that was impossible to deny. But simply confronting him wasn't enough. No, this needed to be more than an argument. It needed to be undeniable. I wanted the truth exposed not just to him, but to everyone who mattered in his carefully curated world. His friends, his family, his colleagues, even Elise. I started with digital trails. Every photo he'd sent her, every message I could discreetly capture. Screenshots, timestamps, call logs. He had been sloppy, and Elise even sloppier. They'd left digital fingerprints everywhere, believing no one would look closely. But I did. I also called in a favor from an old friend who worked in IT. With his help, I pieced together emails and messages Nathan thought were long gone. What I found made my stomach twist, but it also gave me power. Weekend trips for work gifts charged to our joint account hotel reservations, under fake names. The kind of evidence no excuse could erase. And then I thought bigger. Why not let Elise's world know too? If she thought she was stepping into a fairy tale, she deserved to see the rot beneath it. I drafted an anonymous message attaching a few damning screenshots and sent it to her personal email. Nothing cruel, just facts. Cold, undeniable facts. 2 days later, I got my reward. Elise showed up at Nathan's office, screaming loud enough for half the building to hear. One of his colleagues, who had always liked me, called to tell me about the scene, how Elise had thrown her phone at him, how security had to separate them. Nathan came home that night red-faced and furious. "What did you do?" he demanded, slamming his briefcase down. I looked up from my book, calm as ever. Do about what? His jaw clenched, but he couldn't accuse me without admitting the truth. And that's what infuriated him most. He was trapped. Still, I knew this wasn't enough. Not yet. I had set Elise against him, but the real unraveling hadn't even begun. I wanted him exposed in a way that would strip away the perfect mask he wore in public. So I began planning the reveal. A family gathering was coming up, his parents' anniversary dinner. Everyone would be there. The perfect stage, the perfect audience. I pictured it in my mind the moment his lies would come crashing down under the weight of his own arrogance. But before I tell you how that played out, I want you to pause with me. If you were in my shoes, would you have stopped here, satisfied with letting Elise tear him apart? Or would you keep going, waiting for the perfect moment to make sure everyone saw the truth? Drop your thoughts below. I read every comment, and your perspective might just shape how others see their own battles. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the reveal you're waiting for is closer than you think. That night, as Nathan tossed and turned beside me, I felt an almost eerie calm. He had no idea that I wasn't just a wife betrayed. I was the architect of his downfall. And soon, his entire carefully built life would collapse, not with a scream, but with a quiet, devastating truth laid bare for all to see. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the curtain was about to rise. The days leading up to Nathan's parents' anniversary dinner felt like the calm before a storm. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Nathan went about his routine, still trying to play the role of the devoted husband. But beneath that polished mask, I could see the cracks widening. He was restless, snapping at small things, checking his phone obsessively, as though waiting for a bomb to go off. And in truth, he wasn't wrong. The bomb was already ticking. I spent those days in careful preparation. Every piece of evidence was neatly organized: photos, text messages, bank statements, hotel bookings. It was all there, hidden in plain sight on a sleek USB drive that could fit in the palm of my hand. I wasn't planning a screaming confrontation. No, this had to be surgical, precise, devastating. Meanwhile, Elise had gone silent. I hadn't heard from her directly, but word spread quickly through the small circles Nathan and I moved in. She had been spotted in public arguments with him, her perfect exterior crumbling as people whispered. The damage was spreading. But Elise wasn't my target. My target was Nathan's image, his shiny, untouchable reputation. And for that, the family gathering was the perfect battlefield. I rehearsed my role the way an actress prepares for the climax of a play. I practiced my tone in the mirror, measured, steady, not hysterical. People listened to calm voices. They dismissed the frantic ones. I knew if I played it right, every person in that dining hall would see me not as the bitter wife, but as the one who finally pulled the curtain back on the truth. The night of the dinner arrived. I dressed carefully, choosing a navy dress, simple, elegant, the kind of outfit that said strength without shouting. Nathan seemed tense as we drove to his parents' estate, his fingers drumming nervously against the steering wheel. I said nothing, just stared out the window, letting the silence needle him. When we arrived, the room was buzzing with conversation. Crystal glasses clinked, laughter filled the air, and Nathan's parents basked in the glow of their milestone anniversary. He plastered on his usual smile, introducing me to distant relatives, as though nothing was wrong. But I could feel the tension in the way he gripped my arm just a little too tightly, whispering, "Behave tonight." Behave. The word nearly made me laugh. I kept my composure, playing along with polite conversation, sipping wine, smiling at jokes. But my mind was elsewhere on the moment I would pull the pin and let the grenade roll across the table. When the main course was served, I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. From my purse, I pulled out the USB drive and slipped it to the waiter I had quietly hired earlier. He was a friend of my cousin, someone discreet and trustworthy. His job was simple. At my signal, he would plug the drive into the projector connected to the large screen at the front of the room. I returned to the table, my heartbeat steady. Nathan looked at me suspiciously, but said nothing. Then came the moment to toast. Nathan's father raised his glass, thanking everyone for coming, praising his son for carrying on the family legacy with honor and integrity. The irony was almost unbearable, and that's when I gave the signal. The screen flickered to life. At first, people thought it was a slideshow of old family photos. But within seconds, the truth bled onto the screen: messages between Nathan and Elise, hotel bookings, photos he had sent her. Gasps filled the room. Forks clattered against plates. Conversations died mid-sentence. Nathan froze, his face draining of color. His mother's hand went to her chest. His father's glass slipped from his fingers. And me, I simply sat there serene, watching the empire of lies collapse in front of its most important audience. I won't tell you yet how Nathan reacted or what happened when the room turned on him. That part of the story deserves its own moment. But let me leave you with this. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud, it's quiet. It's letting the truth speak for itself. What do you think? Would you have done the same, or walked away in silence? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you're not subscribed, yet now is the time. The next part of this story is where the twist hits hardest. As the whispers rose into shouts around us, I knew one thing for certain. Nathan's mask had shattered, and nothing could glue it back together. The silence that followed the reveal was heavier than any scream. For a long moment, no one moved, just eyes glued to the screen, jaws hanging open, hearts beating loud enough to fill the room. Then the whispers started swelling into a wave of disbelief and shock that crashed against Nathan like a tidal surge. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded neatly in my lap, while Nathan's world collapsed around him. His mother's voice was the first to break through the noise. "Nathan, what is this?" she gasped, her voice trembling. His father, usually so composed, looked like a statue, frozen gray and humiliated. Nathan bolted up from his chair, his napkin tumbling to the floor. "This is a lie," he shouted, his voice echoing across the hall. His eyes darted around the room, searching for sympathy for anyone willing to rescue him from the avalanche of truth. "She's making this up. She's trying to destroy me." He pointed at me, his finger shaking with rage. But the evidence on the screen spoke louder than his protests. The messages, the receipts, the photos, there was no denying it. Each image was a nail in the coffin of his reputation. "Nathan, enough," his father snapped, his voice sharp and cold. "We all see it. Stop insulting our intelligence." The weight of disappointment in his father's tone struck Nathan harder than any fist. That's when Nathan's mask shattered completely. His polished smile, his charm, it all vanished, replaced by something raw and ugly. He lunged across the table, grabbing my wrist so tightly it made me wince. "You think you've won?" he hissed, his face inches from mine. "You don't know what you've started." The room erupted. His cousins pulled him back, his mother cried out, and his father barked for order. I remained seated, refusing to flinch, my calm demeanor burning him more than any retaliation could. "Let go of her," someone shouted, and in that moment, I realized the tide had turned. The room wasn't against me, it was against him. For years, Nathan had convinced everyone he was the golden boy, the perfect son, the devoted husband. Now they were seeing him for who he truly was: a liar, a manipulator, a coward. He staggered back, his chest heaving, his face red with fury. "This isn't over," he spat, his voice shaking. "You'll regret this. All of you will." But no one answered him. No one defended him. Even Elise, who had arrived late and caught the tail end of the reveal, stood frozen in the doorway, pale and silent. For the first time, Nathan was truly alone. I rose slowly, smoothing my dress, my voice steady as I addressed the room. I didn't want this, but I refused to be silenced. The truth deserved to be heard. Tonight wasn't about revenge, it was about freedom. I glanced at Nathan, who looked like a cornered animal. "And freedom," I added softly, "is something you can't take from me again." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. His mother sobbed quietly. His father shook his head in disgust. And Nathan, he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the chandeliers rattled. For a moment the room remained tense, the air thick with what had just unfolded. Then slowly people began to approach me, not with pity, but with respect. His aunt squeezed my hand, whispering, "You were brave." His cousin said, "We all suspected, but no one could prove it. You did." And in that moment, I felt a quiet strength bloom inside me. This wasn't just about exposing Nathan, it was about reclaiming myself. But here's the thing. Stories like mine don't end neatly. Nathan wasn't going to disappear quietly into the night. He was wounded, humiliated, and dangerous. If you think this is the end, it's not. The real twist, the one no one saw coming, was still waiting. Stay with me and make sure you're subscribed, because you won't want to miss how this story turns next. As I drove home that night, the echoes of the evening still ringing in my ears, I realized the battle wasn't over. The worst storm was still on the horizon. The night after the dinner, I sat alone in my living room, replaying the chaos in my mind. Nathan's outburst, his family's horrified faces, the way the truth burned through every layer of his carefully constructed image. It should have felt like victory. But deep inside, I knew it wasn't finished. Men like Nathan don't vanish quietly. They lash out. They try to reclaim what they think is theirs. And I was right. The next morning, I woke to a barrage of calls and messages. Friends, co-workers, even strangers who had heard about what happened at the dinner were reaching out. Some offered sympathy, others curiosity. But the most chilling message came directly from Nathan. One single text: "This isn't over. You'll regret crossing me." Instead of fear, I felt clarity. He was still trying to play the same game, control through intimidation. But the difference now was simple. The world had seen his mask fall. He had no shield left. Days passed and whispers spread faster than wildfire. Elise publicly distanced herself from him, denying everything, though the evidence left her reputation cracked beyond repair. Nathan's father stripped him of access to the family business, furious that years of trust had been poisoned by deceit. His mother stopped speaking to him altogether, but Nathan, ever prideful, made one last desperate move. He confronted me outside my workplace, his face gaunt, his eyes wild. "You think you're free?" he sneered, his voice low but trembling. "You think people respect you? They'll turn on you. Just watch." For the first time, I looked at him and saw not a powerful man, not even a rival, but a broken one. "No, Nathan," I said quietly. "It's over. You don't own me anymore, and the only person you've destroyed is yourself." That was the last time I saw him. Word eventually reached me that he left town cut off from his family, his name in shambles. Elise disappeared with him, though no one cared to follow their story. The world had moved on. As for me, the aftermath wasn't easy. Rebuilding my life took time. Trust was hard to give again, but with every passing day, the weight of silence lifted. Friends grew closer. My own confidence returned. I wasn't defined by what Nathan had done to me. I was defined by how I had chosen to rise after it. And here's what I want you to take away from my story. The greatest revenge is not destruction, it's liberation. When someone tries to break you, when they think they hold power over your choices, the most powerful act is reclaiming your voice. Telling the truth. Choosing freedom over fear. Maybe you're listening right now and carrying your own hidden story, something you've been too afraid to share. Maybe you've been silenced, manipulated, or underestimated. Let me tell you this, your truth matters. Don't let anyone steal it from you. This journey taught me something I'll carry forever. Masks always crack lies, always rot from the inside, and no empire built on deceit can stand forever. It may take courage, it may take time, but when the truth comes out, it sets you free. And if you've made it this far with me, I want to thank you. Stories like mine aren't just tales of betrayal, they're lessons about resilience, dignity, and self-worth. If you believe in those values, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join our community, because together, we remind each other of our strength. Now, if you want to know how someone else turned betrayal into empowerment, I've got another story waiting for you, one that begins at a wedding, where a maid of honor's shocking announcement changed everything. Click over and let's continue this journey. Because in the end, these aren't just revenge stories, they're survival stories. They're about reclaiming life one truth at a time. When I look back now, months after everything unraveled, I no longer see only the chaos, the betrayal, or the nights I cried myself to sleep. I see the garden outside my window, where new life grows in quiet defiance of the storms it once endured. Every leaf, every bloom feels like a small reminder that healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, with patience and care. I've learned that freedom isn't loud or dramatic. It's in the small, everyday choices, waking up without fear, laughing with friends without guilt, sitting in silence without dread. It's the power to breathe fully, knowing no one else controls your story anymore. Nathan's downfall isn't the part I hold on to. What stays with me is the moment I realized I didn't need revenge to feel whole, I just needed to reclaim myself. The truth did the rest. His empire of lies collapsed under its own weight. But I rose because I chose honesty, dignity, and courage. If you're listening to this and carrying your own scars, let my story be a gentle hand on your shoulder. You are not alone, and you are not powerless. No matter how tightly someone tries to bind you, the key has always been within you, the courage to speak, to walk away, to begin again. So tonight, as the world grows quiet and the garden hums with life, I leave you with this: storms don't last forever. But strength once found becomes a part of you for life. And in that truth, you will always find freedom.